A digital growth contract might offer me, say, a 60% gain at the end of 5 years, provided the FTSE 100 index is higher. Now, any investment offering you the potential for a 60% gain at the end of 5 years when interest rates are down at 0.5% has to sound reasonably attractive. Now, when interest rates are at 0.5% and someone's offering you a 60% gain at the end of 5 years, it's because it comes with an element of risk. The first aspect of the risk is that this is a 5-year investment. You could get access to your money during that 5-year term, but if you did, you wouldn't get the defined returns that the plan outlines. Another aspect of the risk is that it's linked to a major bank. And if that bank happened to default, then you could lose all of your capital. But again, that must be considered in the context that if a major bank such as Barclays, HSBC, Santander UK and the likes default, it's going to have catastrophic effect on the rest of your investment portfolio. So your portfolio is not going to be immune to it, albeit with a structured product you are going to suffer a catastrophic loss. So you should always diversify no matter what your investments are. Now, the primary element of the risk here is that the capital return is linked to the FTSE 100 index. Now, quite simply, on the negative side, if at the end of the 5-year period the FTSE 100 index is 50% or more lower than where it was at the start, then you will suffer an equivalent loss. So if it's 60% down at the end, you will track the index and suffer a 60% loss on your capital. Now, in order for that to happen, the index has got to be at least 50% lower. That's a long way down. That takes us back to 1994 levels. It's not impossible. And it's the fact that it's not impossible is why you're being rewarded for accepting the risk. Because on the slightly less negative side, if the FTSE 100 index at the end of the 5 years is down but by not more than 50%, the investment's designed to return your original capital. Now, obviously, we're investing in this FTSE 100 linked contract in the expectation that the market is going to rise. Hopefully, it will shoot away and the rest of our portfolio and mutual funds will do very well. But this contract will give us a fixed return of 60% at the end of 5 years if the FTSE 100 index is higher. And that doesn't matter whether it's up by 100%, 50%, just 10% or 1%. As long as it's higher at the end, it's designed to pay a 60% gain. If it's lower, it returns our capital, unless it's 50% or more lower, in which case it tracks the index. All subject, of course, to the solvency of the bank behind the scenes. Now, you might use that sort of investment alongside a similar one that might not mature until the 6th anniversary. So it might give you a 70% gain if the FTSE is higher at the end of 6 years, as opposed to the one that matured the year before on 5 years. And using two of those contracts alongside each other means that the potential returns are going to fall into different tax years. You could realise gains from your unit trust or your open-ended investment company portfolio in the 4th year and the 7th year, and I think you can see how you can start to use them as part of your tax planning strategy. Now, a super tracker contract is something that will give you accelerated participation in the rise in whatever the underlying index is. So let's again stick with the FTSE 100 index, which is the most common index used in the UK, certainly in terms of structured products. It might offer you something like 200% of the rise in the FTSE 100 index, but only participate in the fall at a rate of 100%, and then only if the market's fallen by 50% or more. Now, these often have a cap on performance. You're not going to get 200% of the rise in the index completely uncapped, whilst also protecting some of your capital against a certain level of falls. So it might be 200% in the rise in the index capped at 80%. So the market goes up by anything more than 40%, you're only getting 80%. Now, this is fine. If the market goes up by 40%, you're getting 80%. If it goes up by 20%, you're getting 40%. But if it goes up by 80%, you're still only getting 80%. Now, the lower that cap, the more likely it is that you will have an increased level of acceleration. So you might have, for example, 400% participation in the rise in the FTSE 100 index, capped at 70%. And there's a whole different variation on that theme. The type of contract, the level of participation, it's going to depend on when that contract is brought to market. Something that comes to market today is likely to be completely different to something that was brought to market a year ago. And that's because the funding rates and the returns that the banks can offer by using the derivatives behind the scenes are going to change on a weekly, daily basis depending on market conditions. A contract that is brought to market today might vary significantly from one that's brought to market in 6 months' time or a year ago. And that's because the methodology that the banks use and the institutions use to produce these contracts is such that it is heavily dependent upon interest rates and volatility in the market. So you might get 200% of the market capped at 80% today, but in a year's time that might only be 200% of the market capped at 60%.